Just as a reminder to all, we do record these sessions and we make them available after the fact on our YouTube page or our YouTube channel, and that is the Reynolds Company's YouTube channel. So our entire archive of tech talks and user groups are all posted there. So if you ever miss a session or want to go back and watch one again, we invite you to visit our YouTube channel. So today is our first user group for the year 2021. So happy New Year to everyone. And our user group sessions are always once a month. And traditionally, we've probably done them on Thursdays. I know the Houston team's always done them on Thursdays. This year, we pushed them back to Wednesday for various reasons. So we appreciate everybody joining us as always. And today will be an automation update. So kind of a traditional January topic as well. Just a look at some of the things that kind of came out during Automation Fair, as well as kind of what to expect coming out new in 2021. So first off, I want to introduce myself. My name is Wayne Welk, and I'm an automation specialist. Oops. Oh, there we go. Automation specialist with the Reynolds Company in New Orleans. And joining me today is our entire automation specialist team from Houston, Brian, David, Joe, and Mike. So as we kind of go through today's presentations, each of us will take a segment. We'll start out with controllers by Joe Blasky will give that update. IO with David Newt, networking with Mike Masterson. I'll cover visualization, and Brian McCusker will do Factory Talk Edge Gateway at the end. All right. So we always show our upcoming topics, and I won't read all of these out to us, but of interest, I think, is next week we'll have a tech talk on the 27th with a vendor, a partner called RealWare, which is a really interesting and unique product that we're kind of just finding out about and have been authorized to sell now. It's an actual wearable Android tablet. It's a wearable Android tablet, and it's actually rated for Class 1 Div 1. There's a version of it that's Class 1 Div 1 rated as well. So you can actually attach it to your hard hat or to a baseball cap or just wear it around your head. So it's a really unique product, and we invite you to join us next Wednesday morning to learn more about that. You can also see the rest of our Tech Talk and user group schedule, each for the first quarter. We defined all of our topics through the end of March, and we will soon come up with some topics, for the second quarter, April, May, and June. Everything is available on reynoldsonline.com, so feel free to go there and see the full schedule and register for all our events. Another event coming up is the Smart Machine Workshop Series. So our North Texas team is kind of taking the lead in getting this one coordinated, but it's open and invited for all of our users and customers throughout all of our regions. And it's going to be a 5-part series on the kind of the smart machine journey. So each session will be about an hour about a various topic about again on smart machines. So just how to become more productive and get more data and more information and increase your uptime with just better intelligence in your machines. So these are open again to anyone. They're free, and you don't have to actually attend each session necessarily. You can pick and choose which topics you want to listen to, or join all 5. So look for more information on that soon as well from our specialist team. And one last piece here before we turn it over to our update is Automation Fair at Home. So you recall it was a virtual experience, and it was back in November. But if you weren't aware, the sessions are still available on demand for at least the 6 months after the event. So I think that brings us to around June, perhaps. So all of the technical presentations, the recorded sessions, they're all available for you to watch at your convenience on demand. Simply log back into the Automation Fair website. If you're registered already, you log back in and you can gain access to all of that content. So take advantage of it. There's a lot of stuff there, a lot of content. It's impossible to digest that all in the 1 week of Automation Fair, but you can take your time and go back and catch sessions that you weren't able to catch during the actual event. And with that, I believe that will bring us to Joe and look at controllers.
Thank you, Wayne. Good morning, everybody. I am Joe Belaski, and today I'm going to be talking about our high-performance controllers, compact and ControlLogix. And if you have any questions, please shoot them in the chat, and I'll try to answer those live. Next slide. So I assume most of you know the 5580R L8 controller has been out for a little while, but it does have a few features that are very important, like the gig Ethernet port and the fact that we made them very, very quick. We've improved quad core functionality and have improved the compiler to get a lot faster scan time and the capability of doing more nodes. And we've also embedded some of the functionality of being able to do some of the safety functions for communication in that IEC 62443 standard. Next slide, please. And so we've come out with a couple different variants of that. So looking at stuff that's new, we have the XT variant, which you notice is a nice different color, little darker gray plastic, and has XT on it, which gives us that extended temperature range. We're still able to do all this without a fan. So we're still able to get that up to that 70C without having to add any fans or anything to that. That does require using the XT chassis, which has a little more airflow capability in it. And we do offer these in conformal coating as well. Next slide. So we do have a Plant PAX controller that is new. And so these have a P at the end of the part number and a nice P on the front of them. And the benefit of these is they have all of the process objects loaded in them already, ready to go. And they already have the guardrails to allow you to make sure that your system meets all of the Plant PAX requirements. They have the task model already pre-built. And this is, like I said, the native process objects are already built in. Is you just use them. You don't have to use them as add-on instructions. And we also have the capability of doing some offline task load estimates with these. And the 3 catalogs that are available are currently shown on the screen. So that's a new offering that is very important. We have our guard logics. So with the guard logics, this is going to be machine safety. Typically, we can do with a single processor. We can meet the SIL2 PLD safety requirements, and we can also still add in the safety partner, taking up 2 slots in the chassis and meet the PLE requirements for higher safety levels. Pretty much all of these controllers, when you buy them, they give you an additional 50% for the memory for the safety. So if you notice, the L81ES has 3 megs of memory for standard control memory. On the safety side, you get half of that, 1.5 megs. And all of these are basically 2 different processors built in one, where one is still acting as your normal process or your normal control system, and the other one is purely focused on your safety. And it allows you to have a single software that works on those, but there are different functions within them, and you can pass data back and forth. So I'll dig into a little bit of safety stuff toward the end of this. Next slide, please. On the ControlLogix, on the L8s, we have some different functionality, and we have this nice quick lookup table to be able to show you all of the different things and what is supported and what isn't. So as you go down the list, we've got our standard controllers, the no energy stored controllers, conformally coded, and the process controllers. And if you notice all the way to the right, we have the high availability column showing that basically everything except for the safety controller itself is capable of doing redundancy. So that's new, being able to use the L8 in redundancy. One of the key limiting factors there is still going to be our SIL2 requirements. They're still going to have to use the L7s for those. but everything else, it shows you what is available in redundancy and what isn't available in redundancy. Redundancy does add a bunch of restrictions to what the control system can do, and that hasn't really changed from previous versions. Next slide. So looking at the capabilities of our controllers, we have this little eye chart here showing you all of the differences between the L7s and the L8s. One of the main things is the overall performance improvement, which is 5 to 20x, depending on the language and what you're programming. We also have the capability of doing a lot more axes of motion for the few people that actually care about that on the call. That's one of my areas of expertise. So I track that. We also have the capability of doing more messaging, more cached messages, and so on, simultaneous messages. And a lot of that is because when the quad core processors, we've actually broken down each individual core to have its own function. And that function basically says that I have one core doing comms, one core doing code, one core for safety, and one core for motion. And so they kind of run and do their own things independently, which really allowed us to increase our communications functionality. And you can see some of the differences there on the right about the asterisks and stuff, as far as like we can do SIL2 and where we can and where we can't do it, and other things that are supported. So we have a question in the comments about how the L8XES is different than the advanced controllers. And I'm going to get into some of the machine safety stuff here in a couple of slides, so I will touch on that shortly. So next slide. There we go. So this kind of walks you through some of the differences on the L8 redundancy and what the limitations are compared to L7 redundancy. So you can see where some stuff we don't have out yet, and some places where we're a little bit different. We do have improvements though in some of the platforms that we can handle. In the case of the 5094, the next gen Flex IO, Flex 5000, we can support that with the L8 redundancy, which we couldn't with the L7. And we're still working on continuously improving all of the redundancy functionality. There's very few things that the L8s can't do compared to the L7s. So, but good to see. Now, when it comes to redundancy, we're typically looking at not just redundancy on the controllers, we're looking at a redundant system. So as part of a system-wide high availability, you can see a picture on the right where we have, down at the bottom, device level ring, giving us some resiliency on the network, redundant controllers, we're using redundant IO down in lower right. And then from there, we're going up into the enterprise level through redundant switches, giving us that, PRP type communication, to redundant servers, and being able to go to redundant HMIs to give us that high availability all throughout the entire system and not have a single point of failure. We can have that high availability. So it's very important in some cases to have that high availability and that high uptime, because downtime in some plants and in some processes is dangerous or is very expensive. And so moving on to compact Logix. I'm going to do it on time. I think I'm okay. So compact Logix, we've released the 5480. So this is actually an Intel i7 based processor. We're actually using half of the processor to run a Windows IO 10 operating system, Windows 10 IoT operating system. And then the other half is still running our standard Logix platform. And it's using the same compact Logix footprint for all of the existing IO. And this would be the 5069 IO. And so it's very, very powerful. It's got the capability of, I'd say it's one of the fastest controllers I've probably ever seen. It's got the capability of doing a ridiculous amount of motion very, very quickly, which is how you can kind of tell how quick the processors are. But one of the main benefits here is that Windows 10 IoT embedded on there. And you can see we also have display ports and additional Ethernet ports for those, and the capability of using that where you can embed some of our software on this module and have it all kind of in one box. And it does have our factory talk security functionality embedded in it as well. So a very, very powerful tool. Next slide. And we've added a few different variants of it to scale it back. When this was originally released, we only had the 20 megabyte variant. And so now we have ones all the way down to 3 megabytes to be more competitive in the different situations based off of use. And in most cases, we don't have a whole lot of customers that would need the 20 megabytes. 3 meg is a typical controller for a majority of our customers. So this gives us that scalable capability and able to scale down and be more competitive. Next slide. So the 5380 controllers, so this is going to be our next gen compact Logix. We've had these out for a couple years, so I'll run through this fairly quickly. They're also based on the quad core functionality similar to an L8. So the performance characteristics and everything are going to be very, very similar to an L8. It has basically all of the additional advantages there. And they do have the dual Ethernet ports, which we can break into 2 separate networks. So that's one of the benefits of the 5380 controllers over the older compact Logix, is that we can have 2 separate networks, or we can leave them hooked together and you still use device level ring or stuff like that. Next. So these are the different variants of the controllers. So we scale. So one thing you may notice is down at the bottom, we go all the way up to an 8 and a 10 meg controller. And we also go all the way as small as a 0.6 meg controller. All of these are in the exact same footprint, exact same plastic, which basically allows us to keep, scale a process from very small to very large and not have to worry about redesigning and redeveloping for an IO change or something like that because we hit a limit somewhere. And so this allows you to continue to scale well beyond or well into the control Logix size and footprint, but allow you to keep the same footprint of the compact Logix you may have used on a different platform or on a different skid or however you're packaging your equipment. So we also have released the process controller in the compact Logix. So again, similar functionality where we have the native process instructions embedded in. You can still import add-on instructions as you want if you have built custom ones, but it allows us to have that same functionality in the compact Logix form and footprint and for smaller applications, so we can distribute process type applications across both portions of our portfolio. And then on the safety side, we have the PLE and PLD controllers. So the one on the left is the PLD controller. So this is going to be your SIL 2, and the SIL 3 PLE is going to be the lower on the right. It's a little bit larger, basically, and it adds in additional process capability and so on to be able to have that failover capability, where the first one is basically fail safe. The second one is fail safe, but has additional checking. And so both of those give you that fail safe functionality. We have added in a bunch of additional capability within these for our motion applications for doing not just safe torque off safety functionality, but also safe speed and safe position control. So a lot of additional functions have been rolled in there. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about machine safety. So Sean, this part pertains to that. Our red controllers typically look at these 2 different standards. So when you're looking at that ISO and the IEC 62061, those are our machinery safety functions, and this is where our guard controllers typically play. We have that 511, sorry, that is the process safety standard, and that's typically where the advanced platform resides. So there's subtly different standards there. It has a lot to do with uptime, and has a lot to do with what a shutdown looks like. And so on the machine safety side, when you look at next slide, please. So on the machine safety side, we typically are looking at stopping the machine before somebody can get hurt, something like that. And most of the time, stopping the machine is the safest function. On the process side, you want to keep things running, certain reactions and things like that. If you just e-stop them, slammed all the valves shut, you could turn a reactor effectively into a bomb, and that would be very, very bad. where in most of the manufacturing space, you're typically looking at these machine safety functions where you're stopping the machine, you're stopping a process because somebody's got a finger stuck in the line or is leaning across something, or there's a risk of harm that way because of something is physically moving. So a little difference between the controllers, and that's really why they reside there. We work a little bit on that process side with redundant control logics, and with our control logic still 2 functionality is where we get into that process side, which is a little bit different. The main thing that you look at though on both of these standards very quickly, spend about another minute on this, we have the capability of basically looking at the difference in the performance levels. We're trying to basically look at the mean time between failures, diagnostics, and the common cause failures. And that's pretty much a standard thing across most of the safety standards. So they can get a little muddy between what's a process safety and what's a machine safety because they look at stuff very similarly. But the machine safety one is more focused on people interacting with equipment, where the process one is more focused on keeping the process from leaving the pipes, basically. Next slide, please. And so this is very similar again between both of the standards, but basically it's how you figure out what you're looking at as far as the safety requirements, whether you need a PLD, PLE. There's a lot. This is a very simplification of the hazard assessment. But basically, you look at risk of severity, frequency, how often would this happen, and then how avoidable is it, and that typically puts you into that PLD, PLE range. And for most of our applications, PLD is fine. Every now and then you end up in the PLE because the risk of severe damage, if you were to get, or possible death, is high enough that we need to move into the PLE. But we do meet both of those requirements. So, and so to meet those requirements, this is kind of how we do that. For PLD, we can use a single controller. So it will fail if something fails, it will just shut down. If we need PLE, we have 2 controllers checking each other, giving additional checks to make sure that things shut down properly. And I believe I have one more slide similar to that on the compact Logix, where we have, again, 1 out of 1. So if one fails, the system goes to fail safe. In the SIL3 side of it, we have that 1 out of 2. So if one of them fails, the other one will recognize it and shut it down. And I believe that ends my section. So if you have any questions, please put them in chat and I'll do my best to respond. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Joe. My name is David Newt, and I'm going to talk to you today about 2 different I/O platforms. The first platform we're going to talk about is the Compact 5000. And let's see, there we go. Okay. So the Compact 5000, it's been out for a few years. We had some updates in 2020, so we wanted to highlight those. For those of you that aren't familiar with it or haven't seen it, the Compact 5000, otherwise known as, is the I/O for the 5380 controller, otherwise known as the 5069 I/O. We always have several names for things in the Rockwell world, so that's that. We consider the 5000 a high performance I/O platform because, ooh, just lost it here. Let me try to go back. High performance because it works with a high performance controller. So it can act as the local I/O for the compact Logix 5380, or it can also act as a remote I/O for a compact Logix 5380 or a 5580 control Logix, or otherwise known as L8. And so you see the pictures there. The picture on the left hand of your screen is an AE NTR module or an Ethernet connection for remote I/O. And then the screenshot in the center would be a controller connected to the local Compact 5000 I/O. And then on the right, we have released some new safety I/O for this platform in 2020. And I've got a slight delay. There we go. Okay, so a couple of highlights. Why do we call it high performance? It supports 1 gigabit communications directly out of the port. It also supports full device level ring and star topologies. It is at this time is not a PRP network, but it does support full gigabit Ethernet. Another thing, if you haven't worked on these before, it's slightly different with the other compact systems. The Compact 5000, the CPUs and the network have 2 power inputs, and so there's an option to isolate your power between the system power, or the backplane power, if you will, and the field I/O power. And so you can choose to isolate or non-isolate, but that's something that's sometimes that comes up with folks that are using this platform for the first time. So that's an option that's not available in the other compact Logix. See, I did see a question came in about the different color on the modules. So the red modules are the safety modules. I don't know if that answers the question, but the safety modules coincide with the Guard Logix controller. So if you've got a red controller, you use the red IO, and that's kind of the color designation that we have on those platforms. If that doesn't answer your question, please ask another question. We'll try to get an answer for you. Okay, so this is a screenshot of the new safety IO modules that we released in 2020. So it's an 8-channel input safety and 8-channel output safety. These are discrete modules. This will probably round out the safety IO modules for the Compact 5000. At this time, there is no plan for analog safety on the Compact 5000. We'll talk about analog safety a little bit later in the presentation, but this is what was new on the Compact 5000 for 2020. Another thing we want to talk about, which is another module that was relatively new in the Compact 5000 platform, which is our serial module. And so the serial module is important. It has 2 primary use cases that we'll talk about. The number one, it supports Modbus RTU as well as ASCII. So we know in our world, we still communicate to quite a few serial devices over Modbus. This module supports that fully. And the other use for this module is when we do phase migrations. And so for a phase migration, if we're migrating a SLIC or an older compact Logix that has connections to DF1 devices or devices over DH45, we do have that support for both of those platforms as we're doing scaled migration. So that's important to keep in mind. So this module requires version 31 or greater of Studio 5000. So it is relatively new. It's been out for maybe a couple of years, but newer than some of the others. Couple of restrictions on this module. The DF1 and DH45 is there strictly to communicate to the legacy controllers. So the PLC, all the way back to 2s, 3s, 5s, and SLICs supports those messages. But it's not there to route to and from other networks. So it's really dedicated kind of to a local DF1 or local DH45 connections. And it's not a port, it's not to be used to download programs. It's strictly as a legacy port to connect to your legacy systems that are out there. So the next platform we want to talk about is the Flex 5000. And so again, this This platform was introduced a couple of years ago, but we did have a series of releases of new IO for the Flex 5000. But just as a recap, the Flex 5000 is our high performance process remote IO. And so you can look at you can see the specs here, -40 to +70 degrees C support, hazardous environment support, really a good platform going forward. As you can tell, it looks a lot like the Flex 5000 or the Flex IO, and I have a slide for that. But we support gigabit Ethernet that we'll talk about also. A couple of design differences and upgrades from the Flex to the Flex 5000. So you can do online addition. You can remove under power. If you notice on the right-hand side, there's no more pins to connect the module to the terminal block. It's a slot connector there, so less of a chance for bending pins and having strange things happen in the field because of that. So a really nice, really new rugged design for the Flex 5000. One of the highlights also, to recap, the Flex 5000 is the first IO platform, remote IO platform from Rockwell to have the option of an SFP adapter. So in addition to the RJ45 copper gigabit connection, we can also put in SFPs that would support single mode or multi-mode fiber directly into the module. So that will make the panel design a little bit simpler. It also helps for the design folks that need to come up with a panel design or a system design, but they're not quite settled yet on the network media. If you design it with an SFP, you can put in, you can even put in a copper RJ45 SFP adapter later, but you can keep that same IO design no matter what the physical network needs to be implemented. So we're pretty excited about that. And let's see, waiting on the next slide. Okay, so yeah, so another thing important to understand about the Flex 5000, it's our only IO platform, including the Flex, to support both vertical and horizontal mounting. So the most efficient way of getting the most IO in a cabinet typically is to do the horizontal mounting and then connect internally like you see there. So even some of Rockwell's complete panel designs are designed this way. So it's a nice, very nice feature for the larger IO systems, especially when we get into plant PAX systems and things like that, where we have a lot of IO in one place. And okay, so so here's a good example of the Flex comparison physically between the Flex and the Flex 5000. As you can see down to the millimeter, it's the exact same size. So it's a simple panel redesign. If you want to move from the Flex to the Flex 5000, you've got the same footprint, so we could keep the same wiring consistency, etc. So thankful for Rockwell for doing that. Actually, if you can see, there's a couple of millimeters different on the height. So we gain a couple, 1.3 millimeters there on the height with the Flex 5000. And so the Flex 5000 also supports parallel redundancy protocol. And I think we'll be talking about this protocol a little bit later, but the parallel, the PRP, if you will, provides another resilient type of network architecture that we now support with the Logix EN2TP Ethernet module. So that's a big plus. As you can see, the Flex 5000 is really built well for redundant systems, for process systems, and rugged systems. So New to the family of the Flex 5000 in 2020 were some of our safety modules. So we released a 16 input, 16 output safety modules, as well as a 4-channel safety relay output. So you've got high density safety compared to the Compact 5000. So if you need that, again, for high density systems, the Flex 5000 is a really good choice and to take a hard look at for our density safety. So we covered that. And the other thing that we released kind of towards the end of 2020 was the highly integrated heart. And so that's a big step forward for us in the process world. And to sum it up, really, the big feature that we've added is the ability to add and replace heart devices online through Studio 5000, through the IO tree inside Studio 5000. So you can see some of the screenshots there. So now there's no need to have an external or a third-party heart configuration utility. We can do all the adding and replacing and configuration changes directly from Studio 5000, which we couldn't before. So that's a big time saver. That's it's a big part of the Plant PAX 5.0 release. So these are the 2 modules that support highly integrated heart. So we've got 8-channel input and an 8-channel output. Both these modules are isolated, so you can choose which channels would use the heart interface, and other channels on the same module you may just need a 420, but you have the option to use that on these 2 modules. To get the highly integrated heart, you do need versions 32 or later of Studio 5000. And there are the AO atom profiles available for these systems. So to summarize the Flex 5000, over the last couple of years, we've had 3 sort of phased releases of different IO. And so I wanted to kind of recap where we are with the platform, because we're nearly there. We still have another release we'll talk about, but we've released quite a few. So we've we started out with the standard modules in the first release. The second release, we released some heart. We also released the high density input and output. So we've got 32 channel input, IB32, OB32s there. So we've got high density modules on this platform. And then last year we released the SIL3 safety modules we talked about. And there is a serial module available on the Flex 5000 as well that was released previously. And so finally, for 2021, we're expecting kind of our final main release of new modules for the Flex 5000. And so these modules will be some analog safety. And so we don't have a date yet. We're still waiting on that, but we're expecting sometime in 2021, but don't hold me to a specific date. And so in that release, we expect to have analog ins and analog outs, as well as a temperature module and a frequency module as well. And so that I believe covers it. I saw a lot of activity in the chat. I think my colleagues have been addressing those. I'm going to give back up control to whoever has it. I guess Mike. I think Mike, you might be up next.
I am. And let's see, how do I need? There we go. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Masterson. I'm one of the automation specialists with the Reynolds Company, and I'm going to go over not a whole lot of information, but we're going to go over some new product that is about to be released, and I've already talked about it a couple of times, but we're going to look at the release of the Stratix 5800 switch. As we look at the portfolio of Rockwell switches, as you see, we go from the Stratix 2000, which is strictly an unmanaged switch, up to the Stratix 5410, which is kind of a quasi-enterprise level, can be layer 2, layer 3 switch, then everything in between. The Stratix 8000 and 8300 that sits in the middle of the picture, a lot of you are familiar with that product because that was the first Stratix switch that was actually released. It's gone away. You still might be able to buy it, but for all intents and purposes, it is no longer there. The Stratix 8000 was the layer 2 version of it, and the 8300 was the layer 3 version. The biggest part of the Stratix 8000 was it was an expandable switch. You bought a base unit, which was either 6 or 10 ports, and you could expand it up to 24, 26 ports, something like that, including with an SFP module on it. That is going away. What's going to replace where it fits into our portfolio line is going to be the Stratix 5800. This switch there will be both layer 2 and layer 3 versions of it. All ports are gigabits, and as you see, you can take it up to 26 ports total. So it's gaining the density. It replaces what the Stratix 8000 could do to give us the density with a lot more features. It's an all gig platform. There are going to be power over Ethernet versions of it. Again, I said there was a layer 2 and layer 3 version of it. It still supports the Rockwell add-on profile. So you can do your base configurations in Studio 5000. That's a huge thing for people who are not IT professionals, to be able to do the basic setups with it. But in the meantime, if that's not your preferred way to do it, or you're a very smart network guy and love Cisco, you can still use the Cisco GUIs or use command line interface for the configuration of it. And a lot of times, sometimes when you do fine tuning on switches like this, you need to use command line interface for it. But it has all those capabilities built into it. All the base modules, the switches are going to be 10 port, which is going to be 8 RJ45 copper ports. Some of it could be PoE if you go that option, and with 2 SFP slots. There's only going to be 1 expansion module. Unlike the 8000, where you can put up to 2 expansion modules on it, there's only going to be 1 here. Again, and there's going to be combinations of copper, PoE, and SFP. There are 2 distinct firmware releases on it: a standard and an advanced. I was supposed to be in a meeting yesterday where we're going to discuss a little bit more details on these switches, but that got pushed back to next week. So I can't tell you everything about the firmware, but I will know where this switch really fits into places. I see it has an edge switch, because with the advanced firmware, it can do multiple rings, meaning we can sit it on, let's say, a rapid spanning tree ring, and then have a DLR ring underneath it. This is typically something we're using with a Stratix 5400 switch, but we're going to have the ability with that. And from what I understand, that's going to require the advanced firmware. So I can honestly say I don't see us pushing a lot of this product without the standard firmware because of the applications where these switches fit. That's probably a capability we're going to want. Again, there's a fixed and 2 ways of doing it. There's a fixed base that will not take an expansion module. 2 versions of it, 1 standard and 1 that's a power over Ethernet. Then there's the modular base, and again, standard and PoE. Please notice some of them will have advanced firmware. And then there's the modular expanse or the layer 3 capable switches. Again, we run into a standard, a PoE, and a PoE advanced. So there's going to be a lot of part numbers involved in this. And let me show you, I will show you that shortly, but these are the base expansion modules. So you will see we can get up as high as 8 SFP ports if we need to go up to a high fiber concentration. Let's say we're using this as a star to a lot of remote locations. This is really where this fits the bill. And there's the eye chart on the number of part numbers for this. So you see we have multiple switches, some expandable, some non-expandable, and then the expansion modules that go with it. So please be aware of this. There will be a lot of part numbers there, and we will do a lot of training with our salespeople to make them aware of this. So we make sure you get the right product for what you ask for. There's a little bit about the switching. There's going to be layer 2, layer 3. These switches do use the latest Cisco iOS behind the scenes, and again supports all our add-on profiles. It has all the predefined tags for if you're needing to troubleshoot these switches. And just the ability, the fact is you can drop them into a Studio 5000 project, just makes life easier. Again, it also supports the macros and the smart ports, again, so you can do some basic setup of your switch and make sure you can get it out there and working quickly. And then the advanced firmware. This is why I think we're going to be moving very few switches with a standard. A lot of these switches we're going to be used in cases where we want to support parallel redundancy or DLR or just multiple rings in general. Also, it's very important that on the higher end, the HSR, the high speed seamless redundancy, that's a real popular protocol in a lot of enterprise type level switches that we might need to work with. So these are very important feature sets for the advanced firmware. That's why I really think this is the switch we'll be using in those applications. Now, David talked a little bit about the Flex 5000 and the IO that we use for it and be able to support parallel redundancy protocol. This is not a new product, but I want to make sure you're aware of it. We do have a network card that fits the bill here, which is the EN2P. This gives us the ability to split to 2 separate networks, a LAN A, LAN B, where we can actually send data out both ports, and the data that gets there first wins, the other data is thrown out. So that's how we're doing a sort of a redundant star type network. It depends, depending on what your customer is asking for when it comes to redundancy, this might be what they're looking for. So in these cases, we use the EN2TP in both the processor and the IO chassis. So both of them are supported here. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we have talked about this, but I wanted to show you what cards are used with the IO as we go down the road. And then just a typical way of we handle a lot of these networks. This is our parallel redundancy protocol. One thing you'll notice, and every time we show one of these drawings, we're using a lot of switches here because a lot of times we have to use switches if we're going to devices that don't support parallel redundancy directly. So that's a whole other discussion. We can spend easily an hour, hour and a half going on design considerations for parallel redundancy protocol. But just keep in mind that when we do this, consult with your specialist. We're all glad to go over your network designs and let you know it's going to function or not. Now, also released earlier was the 1756 EN4TR, which is our SIP security module. That's to make sure that all the data that going through those ports are secure. Now, there's more capabilities that we're bringing to this card. For those of you where the EN2TP doesn't work or a DLR doesn't work because it's a single point of failure issue, the EN4TR with a firmware advancement, we can actually create a no single point of failure, where in a traditional EN2TR card, if we lose that card, we're going to lose that chassis. Well, now the fact is we can put the EN4TR in slots 0 and 1 of the remote IO chassis and daisy chain them together. And then we now have no single point of failure on the cards. So that's a capability that was built into the 4TR. Also, it's going to allow us to do parallel redundancy protocol, but instead of going to an EN2TP, again, a single card, which can be considered a single point of failure, it will allow us to split it between the cards in slot 0 and slot 1. Again, whenever using these cards in a remote IO adapter, they will always go in slot 0 or slot 1. Ultimately, where this is going to get us is we're going to be able to use fewer switches because we'll be able to have direct connections and maybe get some of our redundant boxes or some of the switches up top. We can back those out, and it becomes significantly less expensive when we're able to do that and make our direct connections. Now, just to let you know, these modules, we are waiting on the firmware advance. This is around the corner because I am talking, this stuff is kind of future-ish. The 5800 probably has another month on it before it gets released. And we're still waiting on this firmware support so we can do the parallel redundancy and the out of it. So keep in mind, this is something that's right around the corner, and I think it's going to be very interesting of your process control networks. It's going to simplify the designs because we are going to be able to factor out a lot more switches out of it. And with that, I will hand it off to Wayne and let him take you through our HMI portfolio.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. So we're going to just a quick update on the 6300 VersaView 6300 launch. So through the acquisition of a company called Awesome, and that's
Wayne, do you have control?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I don't know if I'm doing that or not, but if not, I'll just keep on driving there, Mike. But through the acquisition of a company called Awesome, and that was spelled ASEM. Not as it kind of sounds, spelled it was awesome, but it was about early last year, 2020, I guess March timeframe. So Rockwell, through that acquisition, Rockwell has introduced kind of a new line of industrial computers, and that's been called the VersaView 6300 portfolio. So this family includes industrial monitors, box PCs, panel PCs, and thin clients as well. So phase one came out in the latter half of 2020. So there are products that have been released there in that July to November timeframe of last year, and including the monitors, computers, and a thin client, including the 6300T, which is an incredibly small thin client, fits in the palm of your hand. So it's a really small, compact for the panel. I even got one on my desk right now, a demo, and it truly is a very small, compact, thin client. So moving into 2021, there will be the release of what's shown here as phase 2 and phase 3 products. So phase 2 will be coming out in the first half of 2021, and then the phase 3 will be later in the year. So in phase 2, just to highlight these real quick, will be a monitor, an industrial monitor. And what's going to make this monitor pretty unique and pretty nice is, in addition to it being a true flat glass front, projective capacitive multi-touch industrial monitor, it's also going to offer the option for a long distance connectivity. So you'll be able to actually remotely mount this monitor up to 100 meters away, just using a Cat5e or Ethernet cable, very much like it's like an embedded KVM into the monitor. So that'll really be a great feature to kind of allow this monitor to be mounted you know, not in the immediate proximity of the computer. Another new release will be the 6300B, which is a book mount computer. And we actually had a release of a similar product in the phase one. The phase one release included the ability for RAID and additional expansion slots. So this will be a version of it that doesn't support RAID or doesn't have expansion slots. So if you didn't need the extra features there, then you can reduce your cost and have this still in this this form factor of a book, of a book mount fanless PC at a lower cost, but still with a lot of capability and performance that's going to be required and expected in a industrial computer. The another one is the 6300P, which is an industrial panel mount PC. So with the embedded display on it. So again, we had kind of a release of that in the phase one, but what's going to make this one unique is that it does have the ability to add RAID and PCIe expansion slots to this panel mount display computer. And another kind of interesting feature of this guy is that it has the ability to have up to 2 remote video links going out on that long distance 100-meter. So you could have a situation, which would be pretty interesting to see, where you can have this display mount computer in addition to having 2 remote monitors being fed from this as well. And we'll also continue to kind of enhance the thin client line. So the 6300T will be a panel mount, integrated display thin client in various sizes from 7 up to 21 inch, as well as a release of a box of a new box thin client product that can support multi-monitor and up to 4K resolution as well. And there will be some long distance connectivity receivers and transmitters also available for this, so you can remotely mount your monitors, such as the 6300M that we saw earlier, perhaps, to a box thin client, and have a distance, have it mounted at a distance away from the unit. Last slide on this will be phase 3, and this will be later in the year, so we'll know more about really what's going to come out in phase 3 as the year goes on. But part of phase 3 is going to be the ability to do a lot of customization in these products. You'll be able to kind of select a lot of various features that you want to have in the unit. We'll have the address location certifications coming, higher performance graphic cards, and even some on-machine PCs and thin clients as well. So again, we'll discuss the phase 3 as throughout the year as we get more. And I also want to note that we did do a tech talk on the 6300 product kind of late last year, probably in November. So I do invite you, if you want to learn more about these products and get more details on the phase 1 products as well as these phase 2 and 3 products, go to our YouTube channel and catch that previous tech talk. And with that, I am done. I'll turn it over to Brian to close us out today.
Yep. Thanks for all who have stuck around for the hour. It shouldn't be too much longer. So FactoryTalk Edge Gateway is a newish product. Today, Rockwell has established different communication patterns between their hardware and software, as well as other methods in how you interact with other third-party systems. You may have seen this with RS Links Gateway or FactoryTalk Links Gateway to connect to either FactoryTalk Live Data platforms or OPC UA or DA with through Kepware. And so those cover how you can connect third-party automation systems and how you allow third-party software to interact with the Rockwell software and hardware. With FactoryTalk Edge Gateway, it was formerly called FactoryTalk Links Information Gateway. And so with FactoryTalk Edge Gateway, Rockwell is trying to create a more standardized approach in how data is delivered up to the enterprise level or cloud level, depending on where you're at, either self-rolled enterprise or cloud level platforms. And they're also trying to be, again, agnostic to whether or not it's Rockwell on the higher end or other third-party devices down below, and rolling those up into either enterprise or cloud systems. FactoryTalk Edge Gateway allows users to contextualize their data with information models at the edge. So it's another big buzzword. Everything's being computed at the edge and being rolled up to either enterprise or cloud models. And previously, you may have, I guess, kind of had some of your individual systems, Rockwell's term is being siloed, to where you didn't have visibility into the actual hierarchy within those as data was rolled up into the enterprise, and where new models had to be created without any potential knowledge of how the actual process or plant floor actually runs. And so the aggregation of the OT data up into the higher level analytics platforms, essentially, the aggregation of assets, processes, and production rolled up using FactoryTalk Smart Objects can reduce the data preparation on the enterprise side up to 70%, because you maintain your hierarchy that you create at the lower level with your FactoryTalk Smart Objects, and you maintain the integrity of that data as well, and preserve it so that you don't have to recreate it from scratch up in the higher levels when you're if you have a data scientist or somebody looking at a dashboard at the enterprise level. So hopefully, did it go forward? Oh, there it goes. So thinking about how data is traditionally delivered to enterprise and cloud applications, typically each application has to go through its own exercise of data finding. There's typically some method that you have to do in the initial get-go to find the downstream data that you're trying to connect up and roll up into a single platform. When designing those applications, you often don't know how to find the data points that you need because, as I mentioned before, everything's kind of siloed and disparate throughout the plant floor. So if you don't know something exists, it's hard to know how to tell the analytics program, hey, go find this data, and or which tag to use for a particular calculation. And that adds time and effort to each implementation that you're trying to do up at the enterprise with the cloud level. And so with FactoryTalk Edge Gateway, it kind of sits in the middle, and it allows control engineers to identify the various data sets that they would want to, I guess, contextualize. Again, it's kind of the buzzwords, more just how you want to organize it at the lower levels, at the base level, at the floor, plant floor, factory floor level. Those data sets can be abstracted in a way that makes it easy for the enterprise and cloud applications to consume by using the knowledge of those control engineers, instead of relying on somebody that may not understand the nuances and intricacies of the plant floor itself. And so creating those models at the edge close to the data source allows them to be easily deployed, managed, and provide a single source of truth for all consuming applications. And so with Edge Gateway, there's breaking it down or simplifying it pretty far, there's 3 different steps. One is to connect your data sources. This can be Rockwell or third party. Step 2 is to contextualize your data into information models. So that's creating that hierarchy with the control engineers that know the process very, very well. And then the final step is to map all that data to enterprise or cloud applications. And you'll see later, I'll mention ThingWorx being one of those possible applications. And so the standard method of connecting to newer Rockwell devices more frequently in recent times has been Ethernet IP, but you can also use other methods of connecting Rockwell and other third-party devices into using the common communication platforms that we have currently with FactoryTalk Links Gateway, which again, you may have been using the former version of that with RS Links Gateway. And to contextualize the connected data sources, asset hierarchies can be assigned where there may be typical deployments of similar assets. And so with that, because there's a similar structures between certain areas, you can create a template for future project developments or deployments so that it makes it very quick to implement a new project and roll this up in the same manner. And so the enterprise and IT side may not understand the process and what to ask for when building those higher level data models. And the automation side typically will, because they're the one that wrote the program. And so it allows you to differentiate between what makes sense and what the IT analytics side thinks that they need, and kind of more easily combine the expertise to have a holistic solution. And so FactoryTalk Edge Gateway allows you to add assets in a very, very simple manner at the plant gateway level and synchronize the created assets within that model in the FactoryTalk Edge Gateway model to the IT applications upstream. And so before I mentioned, it can have a 70% time savings and not having to recreate the model at the high end level. Well, Rockwell didn't just come up with that number as a guess. They've actually implemented FactoryTalk Edge Gateway in their contactor line in Milwaukee. And they do intend to implement it at other manufacturing sites in the future. And they've seen some really good progress with it. And so utilizing these smart objects that have already been created at the lower levels, FactoryTalk's smart objects, it allows the creation of the synchronous transactional data records at the controller to be able to roll up into FactoryTalk Edge Gateway. And then from there, Rockwell is able to consume the data model built with those smart objects in the controller and decrease the time it took to configure and deploy ThingWorx on the higher end side. And the ThingWorx application will be available in a follow-up release. There's still a little bit in the testing phase for the direct connection. You can do it right now through SQL by rolling FactoryTalk Edge Gateway into a SQL database and then to ThingWorx. But in a future release, you'll be able to bypass the SQL database if you want to and roll straight up into ThingWorx itself. And FactoryTalk Edge Gateway is capable of more than just stringing data into ThingWorx. It can replicate the models you built with smart objects or the model within FactoryTalk Edge Gateway within ThingWorx, or other platforms as well. FactoryTalk Edge Gateway actually creates all the objects you need in order to represent your information models and streams data into those objects, thing templates, thing instances, other networks that aren't a part of PTC. It's fairly powerful tool. And okay. Some of the other enterprise options to map the data to are a cloud-based example would be the Azure IoT Hub. An on-premise example would be a SQL database, but you're not limited to just these platforms right here. It'll be able to roll up into whatever platform you may be either currently using or looking at in the future. And so here's an example architecture. FactoryTalk Edge Gateway itself is a fairly lightweight application. You can install it on anything from the ControlLogix scalable compute module all the way up into a server class system alongside anything else you might be running. The paths shown in either black or blue, I believe, from Ethernet IP, FactoryTalk Live Data, and Kepler or OPC-DA, and that can also be OPC-UA. That represents the contextual data flow of those hierarchies that you would create and organize at the plant level. FactoryTalk Edge Gateway does create all the content required in ThingWorx to represent the smart objects or FactoryTalk smart objects and or any of the models that you create within FactoryTalk Edge Gateway itself. SQL is not required again for the ThingWorx connector. As a future release, we'll have a direct connector into ThingWorx, but it doesn't have it on the first release right now. And I believe that's it.
Hey, Brian, there was a question in the chat in regards to the Edge Gateway, whether or not it's part of the enterprise toolkit. I don't know if you know the answer to that right away. I looked at my notes and the information I had might be a little old because the Edge Gateway is such a new product. Because I didn't see it in the list.
Sure on that?
Yeah.
It depends. I'm logging into the Commerce portal right now. Oops.
I would imagine that any customer that would like to play with it in the near term, we could probably find a way to get you a temporary license. And I would imagine in the future the Edge Gateway would probably be part of enterprise toolkits, but it's just it's a first release, a brand new release. And so that's why it wasn't in the documentation I was looking at.
Yeah, I imagine it would be just because some of the other downstream products are included in the enterprise toolkit.
Right. So I guess what we could do is maybe get an answer from Rockwell and make sure the attendees get a definitive answer on the availability. But I think if it's something you're interested in, I think you should just work with your automation specialist in your local area and they'll find a way to get it to you.
Okay. And I see there's a follow-up question on that too. How is it licensed? FactoryTalk Edge Gateway is licensed on a per year basis, and it's grouped in various tag amounts. So for 100 tags per license per year, and this is all for H5 support. It's $300 all the way up to 10,000 tags per year would be $3,500. So it varies based on your tag count and your level of support that you wish to have, either 8 to 5 Monday to Friday or 24/7. Cool. I guess with that, we're done for today. Thanks for joining us today. I don't see any other questions. Again, I believe our next talk, Wayne mentioned earlier, is going to be RealWare. So check out reynoldsonline.com and search for the events page to register for any upcoming Tech Talks, user group, or podcast. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day.